Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Fantasy Football Predictive Analytics Show with Rhys Tieferteller, joined by Mike Clay. This podcast started on Rhys's book by the same name. And so Mike's been generous with his time for us. Even when we've been traveling, Mike's been generous. So Mike, I would say Mike Clay with ESPN, but everybody knows Mike Clay, don't they?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I love hopping on here and helping you guys out here and build this show up because that's where I started too, right? I mean, I was just a random accountant in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, and just found a love for numbers and sports and specifically football, and just went to GoDaddy and made my own blog and started my own podcast and kind of built from there. And that was just a little over 10 years ago. So things happen fast when you work hard in this industry and make good friends and get some breaks along the way.
So you've actually met the young lad, and so he's 14 now. I think that was 5 years ago.
2017.
All right, 3 years ago. He keeps me honest. And so, we play a little trivia. We won't do this to you this time unless do you have any Eagles trivia for him off the top of your head?
Okay, before Nick Foles, who was quarterback the last time the Eagles won a championship?
Oh, I even know that one.
Oh, man. The last time they won the championship, was it Jurgensen?
I think it was Norm.
Oh, it was Norm. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Good one. Norm Van Brocklin. So, yeah, there you go.
I remember telling him that. All right, Mike, I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to tee you up. So he's 14. He did a little writing. You started 10 years ago in this. There are a lot of people chomping at the bit trying to get into the fantasy football world, but I don't see very much good work from the analytics crowd and the up and coming like I do the other segments. I don't mean that as a slight at anybody. I just mean there are a lot of analysts in this industry. How would you recommend somebody get started? And you said you started your own blog, but is there on analytics though? It's a little different take, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you what. When analytics has come a long way in the past decade. Now you mentioned a lot of people aren't doing that from the fantasy standpoint, but they are from the NFL standpoint, and the reason for that is that we have next-gen stats, right? The NFL has the trackers now, and they're getting us all new data, and we're quickly catching up to baseball, in terms of knowing exactly what kind of precise routes players are running, where they're on the field, how much they're playing, how fast they're going. So it seems crazy to suggest, but we are getting there. We're able to track almost everything, and we're just at the tip of the iceberg in terms of analyzing that data, right? We're charting it, but we're just starting to analyze it. So it's a great time to be young. It's a great time to be coming into the industry. I was lucky because when I came in, look, I'm not the smartest guy by any means, but I came in at the right time and went to Pro Football Focus at the right time when they had all that data coming in that no one was processing. And I was able to dive in and get ahead of stuff that some people are just learning now. But people way smarter than me are processing it and coming away with conclusions that are changing the game. Literally, these people are showing up, doing this work, publishing it, and teams are hiring them, and they're changing the way teams are thinking. And it's going to make teams smarter, and those that really put the time in and know what they're doing and study this stuff are going to be able to change fantasy as well and make us smarter. In fact, fantasy, as I'm sure you know, Jeff, well, is getting harder because it's harder to find sleepers because everyone is learning what you need to be looking at to find good players and which players to stay away from, whether it's touchdown regression or average depth of target, that you can go on and on. People are getting smarter. So definitely an exciting time to be getting in, but it's going to take a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. You have to be married to it. You have to love it. If you don't love it and it gets boring for you and it feels like a job, it's not for you.
I'm with you. And so the reason I didn't mean that as a slight to the analytical guys out there, I just mean there's probably 1,000 people that claim to be fantasy analysts and 20 or 40 or 50 or analytical. It's a different slant. I was telling him yesterday, I think it was yesterday, about your road through PFF. All right, what do you got for him?
You're the projection guy for ESPN. What's your thought process going through those?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that's the question I get asked the most. And I'll tell you what, my answer is always, how much time do you have? Because I can talk and talk and talk about this because there's a lot to it. In fact, right now I'm looking at what I got here. I got 5 spreadsheets open that all kind of work together, right? So probably the easiest way to explain it is kind of like the way the government is, right? You have different branches of the government, right? And they kind of meet in the middle to create what is our government in the U.S. And that's kind of how it works, right? You have a layer of team, coach, league, coordinator, trends, all that sort of stuff kind of pushes, per play data, touchdowns, pass rate, that kind of stuff. That's one branch. Another branch is the player level, whether and there's really kind of 2 parts to that. One is looking at efficiency, right? Projecting out catch rate and yards per target, and you can go on and on the rate stat categories that we need for each position. And then there's the other one, which is kind of the subjective part, which is the inputs of projected target share and carry share and dropback share and following beat reporter reports, which is super important. We're taping this on the first day of padded training camps, and there's a lot going on, and things are happening, and players are injured, and players are getting cut and signed, and this guy, player A, is running with the first team. That stuff constantly affects these numbers. That's why I keep projections basically year round, because I'm tweaking based on this new information and the transaction wire. That's a constant process. But anyway, that's just 3 aspects of it. At the end of the day, you basically hit refresh and look at the new updated projections and go from there. So again, it's a very tedious, long, basically something that's always open on my computer, and I'm always updating, and there's a lot to it.
The other piece to that is, this is my, just because I've been doing this, Mike, since 2007, long time, is that everybody has these strong takes, very strong takes, knowing they're right, and we're fighting over the percentage that you're right. Like, are you 47% probability or are you 72? You know what I mean? And there's so much subjective. You mentioned like the talent level and the coordinator and all this. There is some reading of the tea leaves, right?
No question about it. No question about it. And look, like I said, we're still pretty new in terms of understanding the NFL, how it's meant to be understood, right? There's a lot of narratives going way back that some coaches still believe that are incorrect, right? It's like establishing the run is the popular one now, which is proven to be kind of ridiculous. And like you always punt on 4th down. Remember, you guys have played Madden, like they always had commentary in there. If you ever went for it on 4th down, you just started getting reamed by John Madden, right? Like now that's laughable, like of course you should be going for it on 4th down more often. So you can go on and on with that stuff. So we're still kind of learning those things, and we're going to get better. There's still a lot of room for that. But something I often say is that like when you're doing rankings or projections or making when it comes to decision making with football, certainly in fantasy, is you have to know going in you're going to be wrong, right? I mean, you can't, in week 1 there's going to be a random running back that finishes RB4 that you ranked 67th. You can't just say, okay, I know that information, right? I know a player is going to be out of nowhere finish 4th, and just throw a dart at Gus Edwards and start Gus Edwards in fantasy or rank him top 5 because that's your guy you think has a shot to do it. You can't do that. You have to know you're going to be wrong going in. Play the odds, and if you play the odds over a long sample, you're going to have one of the best hit rates in the industry.
Exactly, and that's where you are, and I give you all the kudos. You've worked for it. I just was saying that Rhys hears me get on that soapbox, just these people with these really strong takes, and I'm like, I'm not going to engage or argue on Twitter with somebody that we're fighting over percentage points of probability. You know what I mean? It's just.
Yeah, but you do absolutely see that. You'll see someone who, for example, I love Zach Moss, right? He's my favorite player in this year's draft. I'm a huge fan of him, but I'm not going to rank him ahead of Devin Singletary this year, right? Like, could he outscore him? Absolutely. But are the odds in favor of that? Probably not. And we don't even know if Zach Moss is going to be good for sure. I mean, I think there's a pretty good chance of that, but we don't know with 100% certainty. But you're right. Some people, especially if you're new in the industry, that's a mistake you see, is people start to get really angry and defensive, and they think that they can't miss. And I was guilty of this too when I came in, and you really get defensive of that player and think you know everything because you got a couple things right. And then this game will get you quickly. You will be made to look like a fool in a hurry if you act like that. So you just have to understand that you're right. Being right 60% of the time is pretty darn good.
Yeah. What do you got for him?
You mentioned one of your branches of projections about the player's stats. What are the ones that roll over best year over year?
Stickiest is what you
Yeah.
mean. What are the most predictive?
Yep. And there are not, if you've read the research out there, again, from people smarter than me, there are not many of them, right? It's very tough. But one of them that's probably a bit of a game changer. It's not quite out there yet. You'll see it on Monday Night Football once in a while, and Sunday Night Football you'll see it. And certainly you're seeing it more in the industry, is average depth of throw, average depth of target, air yards, however you want to look at it. That was a game changer. I came up, I discovered depth as a random column that PFF was charting when I first started there, again, about 8 or 9 years ago. And I thought, that's interesting, right? Because this is information about a player's route when he did not catch the ball. I mean, think about that. Before ADOT, all we had was when the player caught the ball, how many yards he got. That's it. Like, we didn't have any information on what happened on those other plays. So I thought that was really interesting. And it turns out, it's a lot more predictable year to year. You can learn a lot about a player, their role, what sort of stats they're going to put up on a per play basis the next year, what guys maybe underperformed or overperformed, some of them unlucky, some of them just not good at football. So I think that is one that's really key. That's kind of a game changer. And I also like to utilize yards after contact per attempt. That one's tough because a lot of people chart their own yak. Like PFF has a different one. ESPN Sports and Information charts it. Different outlets chart it. So it makes it a little tricky to navigate. But I've had some success finding gems at running back in past years, like Jordan Howard and Chris Carson, and loved Kareem Hunt. Now I mentioned Zach Moss. It's been something that enforced missed tackles has been kind of important from a running back standpoint.
Right. And those all are guys I like this year more than the masses. I like Kareem Hunt. I like Jordan Howard more than the masses. I like Carson more than the masses, and even throwing Carlos Hyde in that situation just by I'm a value guy, right? Because you and I'm a dynasty guy. So I'm always like trying to gauge how does the market view a player versus how do I feel a player is, and try to find the inconsistencies, positive or negative, and make appropriate actions. Rhys, what else do you have for him?
Well, we're going to switch topics a little bit. Go to your hometown Eagles. And do you think Carson Wentz could stay healthy? He proved it last year, but then he got knocked out by a questionable hit by Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah, I definitely think that his durability concerns are overstated. I mean, like you said, he made it through the whole season. He was one of the few to play 99+% of their snaps until the playoffs, right? Had they missed the playoffs, no one would have said a word. They would have said, "Oh, I made it healthy." But come on, he got a concussion last year. What are you going to do about that? I mean, I'm not going to knock somebody for getting a concussion. Now, if you're talking tons of concussions, maybe then there's a little bit more of a concern. That's a different topic. But nonetheless, I think Wentz had some bad luck in there. We've seen that before. Jeff, there's a laundry list of players who were considered injury red flags their first 2-3 years and then never missed another game. I mean, think about Matt Stafford. He was one of the biggest ones, and he didn't miss a game until last season. He went almost his whole career not missing another game after that slow start. So, Frank Gore being another one kind of in that department. So, no, not concerned about that. But at the very minimum, they do have a backup plan now. If you're in a dynasty league and you have Carson Wentz, not a bad idea to spend like a 4th round rookie pick on Jalen Hurts and get him on your bench. I like that move a lot, and you can get him there. He's cheap.
Yep. And so the guy that came to mind when you said it was Fragile Fred Taylor. A guy that showed durability late in his career, and everybody had given up on him or put a discount on him. So I'm going to steal one of Rhys's questions. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. Let's say Wentz misses game 3. Is Sudfeld or Hurts going to start that game?
I don't know. I guess we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. I think they would like Sudfeld to be the 2, and maybe they mix in Hurts in a Taysom Hill sort of role for a couple plays a game. Maybe, not sure if they're going to do that. It's going to depend how good he does in training camp here. So I don't know that answer, but I'll tell you what, it's not a question who I'd want on my bench in a 2-quarterback league or a dynasty league. Obviously, I want Hurts. I don't think Sudfeld is going to be a difference maker. We know Hurts can do a ton of damage with his legs, and I like him too. I like him a lot. He was super efficient last season. as not just a rusher where he was dominant, he was terrific as a passer as well. And I don't think that should be ignored, especially in the tough conference that he plays in. So, or played in, excuse me. So I like Hurts a lot, and I think that it would be a matter of time. If Wentz went down and it was long-term, they might give Sudfeld a start or two. It's not going to be long until Hurts is in there.
I've said this on this podcast before. I think Lincoln Riley gets less credit, and Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts get too much credit. You look at what Riley did to turn around each of those 3 careers. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But Rhys, go ahead.
We'll see.
Yeah, we just have a couple questions left for you. We appreciate your time, Mike, and
Sure.
busiest time of the year for all of us.
Doug Peterson came out in the past 24 hours and said that Miles Sanders is the guy. Do you believe him, or do you think they'll sign someone like Devontae Freeman just to help Miles Sanders, as this is going to be his first year in a big role besides one of his years at Penn State?
You know what? It won't surprise me if they sign a big back. I don't think that has anything to do with Miles Sanders. I mean, maybe it costs them the occasional goal line carry or between the tackles, short yardage carry. That's fine. That's okay. Keep the guy upright. I don't think that's a big deal. They kind of have a void on the roster in the carry department right now. I have Sanders projected for 242 carries and 43 catches in 14 games. So I'm certainly buying into him being their clear feature back. But I have Boston Scott carrying the ball a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, 96 times. I think that they need, someone else probably to add some depth. And again, they don't have really much size there unless you're talking a guy like Corey Clement. You remember him, old friend Corey Clement there. Michael Warren is a guy I liked in this year's draft that went undrafted. He has some size. So I think they could survive how they are. But again, if they sign a bigger back, good for us. If Sanders' ADP goes down, that's great news for us. We'll take the discount.
Exactly, but them chasing Hyde and others, sniffing around McCoy kind of give us a clue in that, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, if those guys would not play much of a role, I mean, it's Sanders' backfield. I think we saw that down the stretch last season. We know he's a very talented player, so that just would not concern me too much. Like I said, I already have him projected as a top 10 back, and that is with Boston Scott and Corey Clement and these guys handling a chunk of carries, because I'm not just going to give Sanders 85% of the carries because there's no one else there. You still have to be kind of reasonable. So he had 45% he averaged last year. I'm at 58%. That's closer to where he was down the stretch last season, but 58, not an enormous number by any means.
Yeah, and I was going to agree with you. Just I see these projections with 310 carries, and I was like, not at that price.
Yeah.
So anyway, what do you have? This is our last question. We appreciate Mike for jumping on, taking a step away from his spreadsheets of projections and everything else going on, and hope, Mike, that, a couple months out when things are settled a little bit more, that you'll give us another, 20, 30 minutes. But Rhys, what else you got? Close us out. No pressure. Down the stretch we go.
Who will be the top fantasy wide receiver for the Eagles this year, with Jalen Reagor being a rookie, D. Jackson coming back from injury, and Jeffrey also coming back off the PUP list?
Wow, I was hoping for a layup there to finish up, but no such thing. Man, I don't know. I don't know. I have Jalen Reagor and Deshaun Jackson just outside my top 50 receivers, and right next to each other. So it's just a matter of who you can get in your draft. Like Reagor right now is going in the 11th round, Jackson in the 12th. Those are really the only two guys on my radar. Alshon Jeffrey obviously likely to miss 6 weeks, so you don't need to bother drafting him right now. But I'm fine with either of those guys. I think they're both fine dart throws in the double-digit rounds. In fact, I think they're very good investments at that point. I'm not a huge Reagor fan when he was coming into the draft, but wide receiver evaluations are very tough on rookies. I like sticking with running backs. I'm good at running backs. Receivers, who knows, so he's going to be interesting because his efficiency was very poor last season. Part of that was the quarterback play, but also he had a lot of drops. He had fumbles. He had mistakes. So it's going to be interesting to see how he transitions, but he should play a pretty big role in Philadelphia this season. And again, Deshaun, remember, we only saw him for one full game last season. He had about 150 yards and 2 touchdowns with Carson Wentz. That's his only game with Wentz. So I have high expectations for him. I have been getting him a lot in the double-digit rounds.
Especially in Dynasty, he's a steal. And even if he gives you, you own these deep dynasties and he's your last flex and he scores double-digit PPR fantasy points 5 out of the 7 games that you start him, that's awesome, right?
You got it.
So, Mike, we appreciate your time. We want to be judicious with it. And hopefully, when the weather gets cooler, we know a little bit more, things will slow down a little bit, that you'll grace us again. And so thank you once again for joining us.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll do it again.
Have a great one.